Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, it's where the game starts.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. Thanks so much for making us your first listen, as we're available on all your free podcasting catchers. This episode is being dropped on Friday, the 18th day of February, and we're going to be talking a little bit about the non-news that's kind of news about the lockout. Plus, I answer a few listener questions. This show, as I said, is available wherever you get your podcasts and also here on YouTube. And if you want to follow us on Instagram or on Twitter, go to Locked On MLB Pods. I'm your pal Sully at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Starting now. Why did I say starting now? Well, I want you to make a mental note of when I said starting now and 15 minutes after that. Because that will be, according to Bob Nightingale and other writers, exactly how long Major League Baseball and the owners and the Players Association all met today. And, there's talk about that time is, running out. We are now in mid-February. Now, according to Major League Baseball, they basically have to have something in place. The Nightingale on USA Today, by the way, I'm not the biggest Bob Nightingale fan in the world. I just want to say that right here and now, but he does report a lot of good things and a lot of things up front. And according to his article in USA Today, February 28th, which is 10 days from now, is kind of the last day that an agreement can be made and have it be realistic to be able to play a full 162-game season. And the fact that the talks broke down after only 15 minutes made a lot of people slump their shoulders. Someone I know was talking about how they knew someone who was involved with some of the negotiations, said, no, it's not going to happen. I know I'm a little bit of a broken record on this, and maybe I need to think this in order to have this podcast, work. That I need to have, games and stuff like that to be played. But the fact that they met for 15 minutes and then walked away, I don't think it's the end of the world. Am I being a Pollyanna on this? I might be. I don't know. But maybe it was one of those, hey, what do you got? Is what you got? Is what you got? Well, this isn't going to work. Okay, well, let's come back in a day or so and see what we got. Maybe they're not going to be haggling like they're in an open market. They're at a swap meet. But maybe they just got the proposals and are going back. Supposedly they're going to be meeting frequently. And there's a lot of things that stink about this lockout. The one thing that's positive about it is right now, the lockout could exist and a long-term collective bargaining agreement could be the result of it. And then we don't actually miss any games. One thing that does stink is that when you think about 2020 and 2021, we didn't have a normal spring training either of those years. Midway through the 2020 spring training, it was cut short because of COVID. And then last year, we didn't really have a spring training. So when you think about all those towns in Florida and Arizona that get a nice influx of tourism during spring training, yeah, it'd be nice if they have that. It'd be nice if that was something that was going on with, with spring training going on instead of a lockout. But the fact of the matter is, the baseball can happen. It can happen. Because, as I said before, they're starting to talk about numbers and see where they can meet midway through. One of the things that I'm actually not thrilled about is the expansion of the playoffs. Now, there seems to be a little bit of wiggle room and maybe a little bit of agreement that maybe the owners want to have 14 teams in the playoffs, and the union has shown a willingness to go to 12 as opposed to what it is now, which is 10. I don't want to see baseball turn into a situation where they have mediocre teams are regularly in the postseason, because baseball is the type of sport where a mediocre team could beat a good team because of good pitching performance or just the nature of the beast. It isn't basketball where you have the same lineup going against each other, and usually the better team will win. I like the fact that there is a gauntlet for the 162 game season, and because of the randomness of the postseason, that the assurance that you're going to have good teams in there is that you don't have tons of playoff teams. That being said, if a 12 playoff team format is what's going to get us some baseball, then let's go for it. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. This concept of things that I'm willing to let go of, including the universal DH, of which I'm still not a fan of the universal DH. I like different rules in the leagues. I like this style of baseball, that style of baseball. I like both of them. But again, small price to pay to get us some baseball. Small price to pay. And so the fact that they're miles away on certain things, but at least they're on those certain things. Now, there have been a lot of things that have been written about whether there's going to be player pools, about the concept of what can we do to prevent tanking. I think removing the draft pick compensation or the automatic draft pick compensation lost by a team for signing a free agent would be very good. If you want to give a sandwich pick or a supplemental pick for a team that loses a free agent, that's fine. It doesn't affect the value of a team of a player on the market. Those of you who understand what I'm talking about, let's say you have a big time free agent. Like a few years ago, you had two absolutely primo free agents in Bryce Harper and Manny Machado, who were free agents in their prime. And yet it took a very, very long time for them to be signed. And they didn't have all the suitors that you would think that two MVP caliber talents in their prime would have. And a big part of it was teams value their draft picks. And they would have to surrender a draft pick as part of compensation for signing Harper and signing Manny Machado. Eventually, the Padres signed Machado. The Yankees should have. Of course, Philadelphia signed Bryce Harper, and the Nationals and were able to get a draft pick for losing Bryce Harper. Now, there was no draft pick compensation along with Manny Machado because he was traded in mid-season. But you see players who go out via free agency who don't get the piles of offers because of that compensation. So if you drop that, suddenly that would be a win for the players. That would be a win for the players. Expanding the postseason, that would be a win for the owners. You start to see what's happening here. The fact that they're talking about things, they may not be close, but at least they're talking about them. And maybe, I don't know, maybe with a little bit of a deadline, and we say, okay, we're expanding, uh, we're talking about these certain issues. The whole 15 minutes thing that people got on may be just that's what they needed to know where each other stood. I may be a Pollyanna about this because I just don't feel like the owners are going to sabotage the thing that's going to bring them a ton of revenue. There was a great thread on Twitter by a guy named Jack Kruger, who was a catcher in the Rangers organization and also for the Angels. He's still with the Rangers organization. He used to be in the Angels, and it was basically breaking down for people on Twitter, one of the things that is coming up is that the minor leaguers are incredibly poorly paid, sometimes bringing in take home pay of less than like $500 over 2 weeks. Some of them sleep in their cars. And he says, he says, you have guys working three jobs in addition to training, guys who are homeless, guys who can't support their family. Not all pro baseball players are millionaires. And that's one of the things that I think that people almost have this attitude. They're like, well, it's millionaires versus billionaires. And one of the reasons why I don't mind a major leaguer making millions and millions of dollars is they made it through that gauntlet to the major leagues. And a lot of times they were making nothing, zero. They were being paid worse than if they were, working as a temp or doing DoorDash. Yeah, they have the privilege of playing baseball, but they're also an elite. It's a privilege for the organization to have some of these players. And there are things that I can't believe the teams don't do. And I've said this before. You get all your minor league players at least a motel room would cost you nothing. A motel room that has a continental breakfast. So they can at least have some, they have a bed to sleep on, a shower to shower in, and they go to the lobby and they put an Eggo and have some frosted mini wheats. I'm not talking about putting them in the Ritz Carlton, put them in the Motel 6. There are things that have to be put on the table, including taking care of some of those players like that and preventing tanking. And there are all sorts of things I love, the idea of maybe, I want to abolish the draft, but a draft lottery that you don't know what order you're going to be in if you fail to make the playoffs. Or that it's, that maybe that's cumulative, but we need something that will allow players to be paid what they're worth, allow the, give if whatever the playoff format that everyone agrees upon to be there and to create a situation where it is not economically advantageous to put a lousy team on the field. As friend of the podcast, Craig Calcaterra wrote in his newsletter, the idea of always quoting the Cubs and the Astros as examples of why tanking can work. Well, you're reciting the ones that worked. But how many times do teams tank that it doesn't work? And you put a garbage product on the field. There are two parts of a rebuild. And the Astros and the Cubs did a very good job of it. They traded away players. They built up their farm system. It was bad for a couple of years, but they took advantage of the draft picks and ultimately put together a championship team. But those are the hard parts. Trading the way the players for and getting players back who will be useful. Look what the Orioles got for Manny Machado, an MVP caliber player. Practically nothing. Zero. They might as well have just kept him the rest of the year and kept the draft pick. Because the players they got back from Los Angeles aren't anywhere near being able to contribute to the team. Look at all the great players the Pirates traded away. And what do they have in response, in return for that? And how long are Orioles and Pirate fans going to have to wait to be contenders again? Sometimes you can build a team from the ground up. It looks like the Tigers might be doing that. But a lot of times you don't. And it can stink. And I want a system that makes teams try to put at least an entertaining product on the field and make it worth to sign some of the veteran free agents who are out there. And they just got to get together and make sure that can happen. 10 days, that's doable. That's a doable time frame to be able to say, all right, well, we know what the issues are. Where can we meet? Where can we meet? And the idea of it being a 15-minute meeting, I know there's a way to portray that as, oh my God, they met for 15 minutes, they took one look and they walked away in a huff, an Aubrey huff. But maybe it was, okay, this is where we stand. Let's figure it out. I grant you, 15 minutes is not a very long time. 15 minutes is not the amount of time that you would think you could do anything meaningful, but maybe nothing meaningful was going to happen today. Maybe it was going to happen over the next few days. That's at least all I can hope for. Both sides know they have to create something. And of course, the owners can end the lockout like that. I've mentioned that before. They've made the decision not to do that. And so here we are on whatever day this was, and what should be a great time. Pitchers and catchers should be reporting. We should be talking about baseball in terms of what the 2022 season, which we will have, will unfold. But those 15 minutes, they looked at the proposal, said thank you very much, and walked out. And to give you an idea of how long 15 minutes was, remember when I said start here at the beginning of this segment? That's been 15 minutes right there. That's how long they were talking. And hopefully it'll be productive. I don't know. I mean, it could be a long shot. Maybe not be something willing to bet on, but maybe you bet on it. If you're going to make any bets, go to bet online. Football may be over for this season, but baseball's I was going to say baseball's in full steam. It should be in full steam, but basketball's in full steam. I'm not even going to edit that out for both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline is the #1 spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And not just basketball. BetOnline is your source for hockey, boxing, UFC, Winter Olympics, and hopefully eventually baseball coverage and information. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline is where the game starts. And you know what? I want to talk a little bit about Built Bar, because this is the time of the year that some of us just give up on our New Year's resolution, but not me. Not this year. I'm sticking to it. I'm going to eat right. And thanks to Built Bar, it feels like it's not even a resolution because I really enjoy eating them. Have you tried the Puffs? And if you haven't, you're missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting bars. The Puffs are the first ever protein infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy. They're not just a protein bar, they're a treat. And they're covered in 100% chocolate. Puffs are a fan favorite with some incredible flavors: cinnamon churro, coconut, marshmallow, banana cream pie. They're all so good. And these are going to be your new favorite. Built Bars are covered in 100% chocolate. Yes, Puffs included. That's 100% real chocolate. Low calorie, high protein. Replace your candy bar with these. They're better. Typical candy bar can go anywhere from 200 to 300 calories. Go to built.com, scroll down to the macros chart. You'll be blown away. High protein, low cal, high fiber, low carb. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 grams of net carb, and 17 grams of protein. And so many great flavors: mint brownie, coconut, almond. My personal favorite is raspberry. And new this month, white chocolate cookies and cream. They're all delicious, and new flavors are coming out all the time. They think of flavors and they make it. They make it great. And they worry about the taste. That's what Built Bar is all about. Make it delicious first and then figure out how to make it healthy. I don't know how they do it, but they do it every single time. Go to built.com, use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. Hey, I want to go over a tweet that I got. If you want to send me tweets, send it to me via Sully Baseball. This is from Kyle King, who is a regular listener and contributor on the Twitter handle. Said Sully Baseball. That's my Twitter handle, at Sully Baseball. Recently, you mentioned things like the universal DH are not hills you're willing to die on at the sacrifice of games. What hill would you die on, baseball-wise? This is a great question, and I kind of alluded to it a little bit in the first segment, that there are things that, like, expanding playoffs, universal DH, these sort of things that I don't like. I'd like the playoffs to stay where they are. I'd like there to be a DH in one league and not the other, but it's more important for me to have baseball than to have that. But when I read this tweet, which I got earlier today, I started thinking about it because I've been wrong before about some things. There have been some things that I was really against and I thought were hills I was willing to die on, baseball wise, that turned out to be things I was incorrect about. I'll give you an example. In 1993 and into the 1994 season, the fateful 1994 season, which became the canceled strike season, I was adamant against the wild card. Absolutely adamant. I thought it was a garbage concept. I didn't mind having a first round, but the idea of a team that finished in second place in the regular season winning the World Series to me just went against everything baseball logic wise. It was antithetical to everything. And I just hated it. I thought it was going to be fake baseball to have a wild card. And I thought it was going to dilute the postseason and make it a joke. And we had just finished having the Giants and the Braves play to the death in the 1993 season. Here's and I didn't say anything on the podcast because it was 1993 and there were no podcasts. I think I called WFAN in New York several times about this topic, but the fact of the matter is I hated it. And when you saw in 94, there were a lot of great things were happening in 94 when the strike hit, but one of the things that was really crummy was the American League West was at the time led by the Texas Rangers. And the Texas Rangers who at that point had never been to the postseason before. But the Texas Rangers in 1994 were not necessarily a good team. They were in first place at the time of the strike, and they were 10 games under 500. And there are horrible things happening based upon the strike. But one of the things I could point to is, that, yeah, this is what happens when you split into three divisions. You're going to have crummy teams make the postseason. And you've had some duds. I'm looking at you, uh, 2005 San Diego Padres. There have been some teams that may not even have been good make the postseason. But I'll tell you, I was wrong. I was dead wrong. The wild card was great. The wild card made baseball better. Wild card gave us the terrific matchups between the Red Sox and the Yankees in the postseason. The wild card allowed for some great division series victories. And one of the best postseason series I ever saw in my life was in 1995, the first year they played the wild card series between Seattle and the New York Yankees. So I've been wrong about things before. And so I was thinking about things that I'm adamant about and thinking, like, I could be wrong. I could be wrong about the universal DH. I could wind up loving it. I could be wrong about expanding the playoffs to 12 or 14 teams. I could wind up thinking it's spectacular. Really, I could. So the hills that I'm willing to die on, though, there are two. The first one is I'm adamant against Ghost Runner on second. The last couple of seasons. Now, again, I understood they needed to do some things during the COVID season to make sure you didn't have super long games. I say a tie after 12, but the hardest thing and the thing that's the most thrilling in extra innings is getting that runner in a scoring position, knowing the game's on the line. And the fact that we had a bunch of games that were played where the team didn't earn it. The team didn't earn it when you have it starting the inning with a runner on second. And it goes against everything that seems important about putting together a quality baseball game is to turn that into a joke. So no, I want the ghost runner gone. Now, the only compromise I would make on the ghost runner, because I believe it should be a tie after 12. Because in the regular season, you don't need anything. After the 12th inning, done. We're done. We're done. Go home. You don't want to see 18, 19 inning game in the regular season because by the end of the game, the stands are empty and they're using like a third baseman and a backup outfielder to pitch. So that shouldn't affect the pennant race. Is how a team hit a backup outfielder. But the fact of the matter is, maybe some people wouldn't like a tie. Then I would be willing to listen to starting with a runner on first after the 12th inning. So it's the 13th inning. All right, we'll start with a runner on first. Because so few games go to 13. It's a rare occurrence. And I think you're going to have longer games if you had the ghost runner. So I'd be adamant about that. And there's another thing that I've heard as a suggestion from time to time. And that was, and I've had guests on here making the suggestion that you create a rule where, like, once during the game, you can bat someone out of order. It's like almost like hitting a cheat code, and the Angels can bring up Mike Trout or whatever at an opportune time. I'm going to just die on the hill saying I do not want that because that goes against one of the things that makes baseball wonderful, truly wonderful, and that is you have your time at bat. And I talked about this when I coached Little League. I said baseball for kids, for like Little League and things, baseball is the greatest game of them all for kids because if you're playing youth basketball, the good kid can always get the ball. You're playing AYSO soccer, the good kids can always get the ball kicked to them. If you're playing baseball, everyone gets a turn at bat. It's not always going to be the best kid coming up. It's not always going to be the best hitter coming up. You're going to get to that lower part of the order. And what that does is it creates a situation where you're trying, it's strategy. You're trying to keep the inning alive to get to the top of the order, but also you wind up having unlikely heroes. You wind up having people on the teams that you're not expecting. I mean, nobody was more of an unsuspecting hero than Francisco Cabrera when he came up and he got that hit that sunk the Pirates in the 1992 National League Championship Series. Of course, the Braves would rather have had Terry Pendleton or Dave Justice or Ron Gant or whomever at the plate instead of Francisco Cabrera. Of course they would, but they didn't. And it allowed for an unlikely hero, something that you can't really see in other sports like that. In the 2020 World Series, when Brett Phillips got the game-winning hit off of Kenley Jansen in that crazy play where the outfielder kicked in and Rosarena fell and everything like that, it was Brett Phillips at the plate. Of course the Rays would rather have had it be a Rosarena at the plate. Of course they'd rather have, at that point, Joey Wendell or Yandy Diaz or Hunter Renfroe at the plate instead of Austin Meadows. But it allows for that. We got to do it. You got to get that big moment. It creates new heroes, unlikely heroes. Think about the unlikely. How many unlikely postseason heroes we've seen over the history of baseball. Think about, of course, the Yankees would have rather have had Bucky, instead of Bucky Dent, have Reggie Jackson at the plate at that key moment against the Red Sox in that playoff series. Or Aaron Boone. Of course, they would rather have had Jeter or Matsui or Giambi. But it was Boone's turn. And Boone got to be the hero. Some of the strange, unlikely postseason heroes, whether it's Gene Tennis, whether it's Todd Pratt, whether it's Mark Lemke, whether it's Ben Zobrist. These are all people you don't expect to be the hero. And here we are with them as the hero. And that's because of the way the baseball lineup unfolds. And I will die on that hill that if you take that away from the game, then you're taking away one of the things that make it, I think, truly beautiful, and that it fosters unlikely heroes. I got another comment from Sam McBride, who's a YouTube follower. And when I was talking about the universal DH, he says, "Hello, National League DH, about 5 decades late." I don't agree with Sam, but hey, it looks like it's coming. Better late than never. All right, fine. Now we need to ban the shift, which is the most disgusting thing in all sports. Well, I don't know if it's the most disgusting thing of all sports. If you're looking around the sports page, there's some pretty ugly stories going on right now. But that being said, I do agree with Sam about one thing with the shifts. I would love to see a crackdown on the shifts because, well, I like more action in my baseball, but I also, you know, I'd like to see players playing their position. And there's so many times, oh, there's a base hit. Oh, no, there's a guy in right field. Now, it's a good strategy. I'm not saying it's dumb for the managers to do it. They're trying to get outs. But I want to see a ball get through the infield every once in a while. And, of course, sometimes when you see they've left this entire side of the infield open, you think, like, lay down a bunt, and you know, bat 700 this year. But I do like my strategy that you basically say you don't have to have even a line. You say you have to have when the pitcher comes to set, when it comes to comes to set on the mound, there has to be two infielders on the left side of second base and two infielders on the right side of second base, fielding their positions. I think that's a fair thing to say. This is going to be part of baseball. These you lined them up the way a baseball team is supposed to be. And I think it will make for more hits. I think it'll make for more offense. I think, you watch a game and then ground ball to second, here we go. Ground ball to short, here we go. I talked the other day about how a rise in offense is always the thing that brings the fans back. Well, I'm not saying it's not smart to put the shifts on, but maybe it's something that you adjust. When the pitcher comes to the set, that's where they are. Now, if he gets to the windup, you want to make a break for the other side of the base or whatever, go ahead. Go ahead. But at least at that point, we're seeing, all right, we're about to throw the pitch, everyone's in their positions. That's be my compromise for that. Not necessarily sure that's a hill I'm willing to die on, but there you go. But I do think we're going to have baseball eventually. I do think the sides are going to come to their senses, and it may take more than 15 minutes, but here we are. But hey, I want to thank everyone for making Locked On MLB your first listen. And how about your second listen be Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q, with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. It's free and available where you get your podcasts. Hey, everyone. Sorry I missed a bunch of days. Life got in the way. I'm going to record a bunch of episodes this weekend, trying to have as many gaps in the schedule. But hey, them's the breaks, and I'm glad to be listening, having you on the show and listening to what I have to say here on the 18th day of February, 2022. This has been Locked On MLB. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.